He walked into the small diner dressed in rags, hiding his billion-dollar life behind calloused hands and a worn-out jacket. She approached his table with nothing but dignity and kindness. But the choice she made next would shake his world forever. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as beautiful as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The morning sun spilled through the half-open blinds of Clara's diner, painting warm stripes across the checkered floor. The scent of frying bacon mixed with the faint aroma of strong coffee, weaving comfort into the chaos of clattering plates and chatter. Behind the counter, Monica, the waitress, moved with a rhythm she had perfected over years, quick, precise, but gentle. "Morning, Mrs. Reynolds," she said to a regular, setting down a steaming cup of coffee. "You'll get extra syrup, just like last time." Mrs. Reynolds smiled, a toothless grin but full of warmth. "You always remember, Monica. That's why people keep coming back." Monica's smile flickered with pride, but her eyes hinted at weariness. Bills, rent, her little brother's school fees. Life didn't leave much room for indulgence, yet she carried herself with dignity, a quiet defiance against hardship. Outside, the city thrummed with ambition. Glass towers reflected the sunlight, corporate logos glinting proudly. In one of those towers, Ethan Grant, billionaire CEO of Grant Industries, stirred his morning espresso in his penthouse. Impeccable suit, polished shoes, an empire built on power and precision. And yet, as he gazed down at the city, a gnawing curiosity tugged at him. People fascinated him, especially the ones who couldn't be bought or charmed with money. Today, he was not Ethan Grant, billionaire. Today, he was a man with worn shoes, frayed jeans, and a jacket that had seen better days. He had slipped quietly out of his penthouse, ignoring the driver and the bodyguards, clutching a small wallet that held just enough to pay for coffee. He entered Clara's diner, the bell over the door jingling softly. Patrons barely glanced up. It was just another stranger in the early morning rush. But Monica's eyes caught him. Something about the way he hesitated by the counter, surveying the room with quiet unease, made her pause. "Can I help you?" she asked, approaching him with a warm, professional smile. He looked at her, studying her, not the curve of her smile or the tilt of her head, but the way she treated every customer with equal kindness, the patience in her gestures. "Yes, coffee. Black. And maybe a bagel." His voice carried an uncertain tone, soft, almost apologetic. Monica nodded. "Coming right up. Take a seat anywhere." As he sat at a corner table, fidgeting with his coat, he watched her move gracefully between tables. Every interaction, the laugh she shared with a nervous young man ordering pancakes, the gentle hand she placed on an elderly woman's arm, revealed something. Integrity, kindness, a warmth money couldn't manufacture. Monica returned with his coffee and bagel, setting them down carefully. "Here you go. Hope that's to your liking." "Thank you," he said, and for a moment, his eyes met hers. He searched for anything that could betray her intentions, but all he found was sincerity. Across town, in a skyscraper that scraped the clouds, Ethan's assistant scrolled through the morning brief. "Sir, your 9 a.m. meeting." Ethan ignored the text, his mind on something far away, a diner, a waitress, a quiet truth he needed to understand. His empire felt empty in comparison to the small, human moments he witnessed. Monica wiped down a counter, humming softly, unaware of the invisible experiment that had just begun. She didn't know he had millions. She didn't know he could buy anything she could ever dream of. All she knew was the man in front of her, a stranger, vulnerable in his own way, like everyone else she served. When he left a meager tip, she smiled politely, thanking him. But in his eyes lingered a question. What would she do if she knew? The door jingled as he stepped back into the sunlight, the city stretching endlessly around him. He tugged his coat tighter, hiding wealth and identity alike, and wondered if courage, honesty, or perhaps destiny would reveal the truth he hadn't even dared to imagine. And somewhere deep inside, Monica's small act of kindness, performed without expectation or recognition, had begun to shake the foundations of a man used to controlling the world. The diner buzzed with its usual morning chaos. Monica moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates and refilling coffee cups. It was routine, comforting in its rhythm, until the man from yesterday returned, still in tattered clothes, still carrying an air of quiet uncertainty. He hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room. Patrons barely noticed him. He seemed invisible. Monica, however, recognized him instantly. "Back so soon?" she asked, smiling politely. "Yes. I wanted to try something new today," he stammered, his eyes darting around nervously. She gestured toward a booth near the window. "Go ahead, I'll be right over." As she walked away, Ethan, her stranger from yesterday, took a deep breath. Today he had a plan. He would test her, not cruelly, but subtly. He wanted to see if honesty, generosity, and empathy would shine even when there was something to gain or to deceive. Monica approached with a menu. "Here's our special today: eggs, toast, and a side of fresh fruit. Or would you like the usual bagel and coffee?" Ethan hesitated, feigning indecision. Maybe. Could you, do something special for me?" Monica raised an eyebrow. "Something special? Yes, something free?" His voice was light, almost joking, but the underlying question was clear. Would she take the bait? Would she offer generosity where it was convenient, or where it was needed? Monica paused, studying him for a heartbeat. Around them, other customers chatted, unaware of the subtle test unfolding. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "Everything has a price. But I can make sure your meal is extra filling." "That I can do." Ethan froze. The first flicker of surprise crossed his features. He expected hesitation, negotiation, maybe even a sly attempt to get a free meal. Instead, she held her ground with dignity and kindness. She was not going to be swayed by appearances or by the small challenge he had set. He nodded slowly, masking a growing respect. "Thank you," he said, softening his voice. As she turned to place his order, Ethan observed her interactions with others. A young man at the counter dropped a fork. Monica knelt to help him pick it up, laughing gently at his embarrassment. A woman at another table looked tired and frazzled, Monica noticed, offering an extra cup of coffee with a reassuring smile. Every gesture, every glance, seemed effortless yet deeply human. When she returned with his meal, she set it down carefully. "Here you go. I hope it's to your liking." Ethan picked up his fork, pretending to eat casually, but his mind raced. Integrity, empathy, honesty. How could someone be so naturally good? He decided to push further. As she walked by, he dropped a few crumpled bills onto the table, just enough for a tip. Not extravagant, not generous, but enough to see if she noticed. Monica paused mid-step, glanced at the bills, then looked at him. She frowned, a mixture of concern and confusion. "This isn't necessary," she said quietly. "You've already paid for your meal. I can't take this." Ethan's hand froze in disbelief. She wasn't tempted. She wasn't swayed. Her integrity was absolute, unshakable. He could feel it in the way her shoulders squared, in the subtle firmness of her gaze. A small laugh escaped him, part amusement, part awe. You really don't care about money, do you?" Monica smiled softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Money doesn't make a person better. Or worse. How you treat others, that's what matters." The words hit him like a jolt of electricity. The very principle he had sought to test, the one he thought he controlled, was alive and radiant in her. He could feel a shift inside himself, a crack in the armor he wore as CEO, billionaire, ruler of empires. At that moment, the diner seemed quieter, the clatter and chatter fading into background noise. Ethan realized he was seeing something rare, a person who lived her values without hesitation, without calculation, without expecting reward. And it scared him. Scared him because it reflected everything he had missed in his own life. Monica moved to serve another table, unaware of the seismic shift she had caused. Ethan remained at his booth, staring down at the untouched tip, heart racing. He had come to observe, to test, to manipulate in his own subtle way. Instead, he had been unmasked, not by someone else, but by his own blind assumptions. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. One small gesture, one act of uncalculated kindness, had changed the rules of the game. The next move would be crucial. The diner hummed with life as the morning rush began to ebb. Plates were cleared, coffee refilled, and the scent of toasted bagels lingered in the air. Yet, in the corner booth, Ethan Grant remained frozen, staring at the small tip Monica had refused. He hadn't expected her reaction. Not the gentle refusal, not the quiet confidence, not the moral clarity. Something about it unsettled him, a feeling he hadn't encountered in his corporate boardrooms or private jet lounges. He was used to controlling outcomes, bending people subtly, buying influence. And here, in a cramped diner with linoleum floors and chipped mugs, he was powerless. Monica moved between tables with her usual grace, offering small smiles, filling orders, comforting an anxious child, and listening patiently to an elderly woman who rambled about her missing cat. Every interaction was a reminder that the world outside his luxury towers operated on values he had long dismissed: honesty, empathy, dignity. As he sipped his coffee, Ethan noticed subtle details he had never appreciated before. The crease in her apron from repeated washes, the faint scar on her knuckle, the way she tilted her head while listening. Each small gesture was a testament to a life lived with integrity, and each gesture cut deeper into his carefully constructed perception of reality. "Monica, can I ask you something?" he called as she passed. She approached, eyebrows raised in polite curiosity. "Of course. Why? Why do you treat everyone with the same kindness? Even people who don't tip well, or who are rude?" His voice was careful, searching, betraying the first hints of vulnerability. Monica tilted her head thoughtfully, placing a coffee cup on a nearby table. "Because everyone deserves respect. Not because they're rich, or powerful, or whatever you are," she said, glancing at him briefly before focusing on her next task. Ethan froze internally. She didn't know. And the truth about who he was, could destroy this fragile honesty he had come to admire. Yet, he realized he couldn't reveal it yet. The risk was too great, and the lesson too important. Around them, the ripple of the spark event began to spread. A regular customer, overhearing parts of their conversation, whispered to a friend, speculating about the odd, ragged man. Another patron noticed Monica's unwavering poise and commented quietly, "She's always so kind, even when she doesn't have to be." In his mind, Ethan saw the shockwaves extending far beyond the diner walls. A simple act of honesty, a refused tip, had unsettled him, challenged his assumptions, and planted doubt in his control over human behavior. He had intended to observe her, to test her, to measure her character. Instead, he found himself measured, and found wanting. Monica, unaware of the internal storm she had created, continued her work. She served a young couple with patience, refilled sugar and cream, and laughed gently with a nervous customer trying to order a complicated breakfast. Every action reinforced the lesson Ethan was grappling with. Integrity cannot be faked, controlled, or manipulated. It reveals itself naturally, in moments small and large. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from his assistant reminding him of back-to-back meetings, investment updates, and a boardroom crisis. Normally, he would have responded immediately, juggling priorities like a seasoned conductor. Today he ignored it. The buzzing, urgent messages felt meaningless compared to the quiet gravity of the lessons unfolding before him. He leaned back, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly, and realized something terrifying. He cared. Not about the business news, not about power or influence, but about Monica. About her reaction, her choices, her small acts of everyday bravery. He hadn't anticipated that testing her would make his own heart the battlefield. Meanwhile, Monica's friend at the counter noticed the way she lingered at his table. Her curiosity piqued. "You like him, don't you?" she whispered conspiratorially. Monica flushed, dismissing the thought, but even she couldn't deny the spark of intrigue. Something about him was different, even if she didn't yet know why. The diner was quieter than usual that afternoon, a lull between the morning rush and the lunchtime crowd. Monica wiped down the counter, humming softly, her mind occupied with the usual tasks, restocking napkins, folding menus, and thinking about her brother's school project. Ethan sat in his corner booth, observing. But unlike earlier, he wasn't filled with awe. He was uneasy. Every act of kindness Monica displayed felt like a mirror to his own shortcomings. The more he watched, the more he realized he couldn't control the outcome of his little experiment. He wanted to test her morality, but instead, he felt tested. And that realization stirred an unfamiliar restlessness. When Monica approached with a fresh cup of coffee, he decided to provoke, just slightly. "You really don't mind when people take advantage of your kindness?" His tone was light, teasing, but edged with a challenge. Monica raised an eyebrow, setting the cup down. People aren't trying to take advantage. They're just being human. Ethan leaned back, masking the frustration in his chest. He wanted to see if she would falter, if her moral compass could be swayed by clever words or subtle manipulation. Even if someone clearly lied or tricked you. Her hands paused briefly on the counter, a flicker of surprise passing across her face. Even then, she said calmly, everyone makes mistakes. That doesn't change who they are at their core. He frowned, resisting the growing admiration and the gnawing feeling of inadequacy. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was the one orchestrating the scenario, not the one being challenged, not the one learning lessons about empathy and integrity. From the back corner, a regular customer muttered to a friend, noticing the tense exchange. She's not backing down, is she? Monica returned to her tasks, unfazed by the observation. She moved with grace, handling each customer with the same patience and dignity, oblivious to the internal storm she had stirred in the man before her. Ethan's mind raced. He wanted to test her further, push her to a limit where honesty might crack under pressure. But each step he took toward manipulation felt heavier, morally questionable. He realized that the act of deception, the disguise, the test, was beginning to weigh on him more than he had anticipated. A group of teenagers entered, loud and boisterous. One of them accidentally knocked over a glass, sending water spilling across the table. Monica rushed over, grabbing napkins and cleaning with efficiency. She apologized for the inconvenience even though it wasn't her fault. Ethan watched, noting the subtle difference between mere politeness and genuine concern for others. He tried again, this time more subtle, leaving a few coins on the table as a tip, seeing if she would notice and accept it. She did notice, but again refused. I appreciate it, she said softly, but it's not necessary. He stared, frozen, a mix of disbelief and growing respect etched into his features. How could one person remain unshaken in the face of such minor provocations? How could she stay true to her values when so many others would compromise, even in small ways? Ethan realized something unsettling. His own sense of control, long nurtured in boardrooms and luxury offices, was slipping. He was no longer the puppeteer. He was a student, learning from someone he had expected to test. As he wrestled with these thoughts, Monica's friend at the counter leaned over quietly. You don't have to let him get to you, she whispered, nodding toward Ethan. People like that, sometimes they come into your life and shake everything up. But you keep doing what's right, no matter what. Monica smiled faintly, appreciating the reminder, but her eyes flickered back to Ethan. There was something different about him, something behind his tired eyes and ragged clothes. Yet, she didn't know what. Something told her to be cautious, to guard her trust while still being her authentic self. The rest of the morning passed with subtle tension. Every glance between them carried unspoken meaning. Every gesture, every word, held potential weight. Ethan's experiment was slowly unraveling. He wanted to challenge her integrity, but he found himself challenged instead. His pride and assumptions resisted, but his heart was quietly shifting. As the lunch crowd began to filter in, Ethan rose abruptly, feigning urgency. I should go, he said, voice clipped but distracted. Monica nodded politely, returning to her station. See you next time, I guess. Outside, he paused on the sidewalk, looking back at the small diner. His plan to manipulate and test her had met resistance. Not the resistance of a simple challenge, but of truth, integrity, and human decency. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure how to proceed. The lunch crowd had grown unusually large that afternoon, filling the small diner with chatter, laughter, and the clatter of plates. Monica moved efficiently between tables, refilling drinks, balancing trays, and greeting every customer with the same warmth she had shown all morning. Yet, despite her focus, she couldn't ignore the man who had returned once again, sitting quietly in his corner booth. Ethan's disguise had held so far: frayed jeans, worn jacket, unassuming demeanor. But the constant presence of Monica, her unshakable attention to the world around her, made him increasingly aware of how out of place he was. Not just socially, but emotionally. A spilled tray near the counter suddenly forced their proximity. A young boy, rushing past Monica, knocked over a tray of sandwiches, sending the food tumbling across the floor. Monica crouched immediately, gathering pieces and cleaning up, while Ethan instinctively stepped forward to help. "Here, let me help," he offered, grabbing a sandwich wrapper just as Monica moved to pick it up. "Thank you," she said, eyes meeting his. There was no warmth in her tone, but neither was there irritation, only focus. She handed him a rag to mop up the water. The close contact, the shared task, forced them to interact in a way that was more personal than either expected. "You're not like the others," he said quietly, brushing crumbs from his sleeves. Most people would have ignored this mess or blamed someone. Monica paused, giving him a flat but honest look. "Maybe they just don't see it as their responsibility. I see it. And this kid, he's not trying to make trouble. Accidents happen." Ethan watched, captivated. Every word she spoke, every motion she made, reaffirmed the qualities he had come to admire. But it also stirred a growing anxiety. Being near her, touching the same surfaces, breathing the same air, made the lies of his disguise weigh heavily. How long could he maintain the act? How long before the truth came crashing down? A sudden phone call in the diner broke the moment. Monica's friend at the counter leaned over, whispering, "Hey, could you cover the front for a sec?" Monica nodded and left Ethan to handle the mess alone. He moved to mop up the last spilled water, silently grateful for the excuse to linger. The diner's chaos created a strange intimacy. The forced proximity stripped away social pretenses. For a man used to commanding boardrooms, issuing orders, and controlling outcomes, this lack of control was both thrilling and terrifying. Minutes later, Monica returned with fresh napkins and a warm smile. "All set." Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump forming in his throat. "Yeah, thanks." She glanced at him, something flickering in her eyes, curiosity, perhaps suspicion, but quickly replaced with professionalism. "You've been coming in a lot these past few days," she remarked casually, stacking menus. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. The truth would undo the fragile dynamic he had observed, the way she treated everyone with genuine care, uncolored by social standing or appearance. He could lie, as he had before, or he could risk honesty. But for now, he simply said, "Just enjoying the coffee. That's all." Monica's gaze lingered for a moment, thoughtful, then she returned to her duties. Yet the tension between them had shifted. Shared tasks, small crises, and close proximity had built a quiet intimacy, one neither could fully acknowledge yet. Across the diner, other patrons noticed subtle changes in their interactions, the way they moved in sync while cleaning, the silent understanding in their brief exchanges. A regular at the counter whispered, "There's something different about him today, something about the way she looks at him." Ethan's mind raced. Each encounter, each moment forced upon him by circumstance, chipped away at his carefully constructed persona. He had planned to test her, to measure her integrity, to observe her character. Now, forced into close quarters, he was learning lessons about himself he hadn't anticipated: humility, vulnerability, and an unfamiliar warmth in connection. Monica, for her part, remained grounded in her principles. She noticed his presence, recognized the subtle tension, and handled it with grace, balancing kindness with caution. She didn't yet know the full extent of his deception, but she sensed a complexity behind his eyes, an honesty buried beneath layers of pretense. By mid-afternoon, the diner was filled with the low hum of conversation, the clinking of utensils, and the rich aroma of coffee blending with fried breakfasts. Monica moved briskly between tables, balancing trays and taking orders, but a subtle tension hung in the air, an invisible thread connecting her to the corner booth where Ethan sat. Ethan had been coming almost daily now, each visit drawing him closer to the truth he wasn't ready to confront. His disguise, worn jeans, scuffed shoes, a frayed jacket, was beginning to chafe, a constant reminder that he was living a lie. And yet, the real tension wasn't the disguise, it was Monica. Every small gesture she made, every word she spoke, seemed to challenge his assumptions, provoke his curiosity, and stir emotions he had long buried beneath wealth and control. Today, the conflict began subtly. Monica served a young couple at a booth nearby, laughing gently at their playful bickering. Ethan noticed a slight hesitation in her eyes as she glanced toward him, as if weighing whether to acknowledge his presence or remain focused on her duties. It was a small, almost imperceptible moment, but it triggered a ripple in him, a mix of anticipation, frustration, and admiration. He decided to push the boundaries, testing not just her honesty but her patience. "You really don't mind all this chaos?" he asked, voice low, but edged with a hint of provocation. "All the noise, the mistakes, the people who barely notice you?" Monica's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "I notice them. That's what matters. I'm not here for attention or gratitude," she said, voice calm but firm. "I'm here to do what's right." Ethan frowned, feeling the first stirrings of genuine frustration. He had come to observe, to manipulate subtly, yet every attempt seemed to bounce harmlessly off her integrity. Her calm defiance made him question not only his plan but himself. For a man accustomed to control, this was unfamiliar terrain. External pressures began to weave into the tension. A regular customer grumbled about a long wait. Another patron complained about a lukewarm coffee, and the diner's old cash register jammed, slowing service. Monica moved with grace, but her patience was tested, and Ethan observed keenly, noting her resilience. Every small challenge she handled with dignity further impressed him, and further unsettled him. Trying a different tactic, he made a casual remark intended to provoke self-interest. "You probably don't get much out of this job, do you? Surely, you'd rather be doing something easier, more profitable?" Monica paused, a faint frown crossing her face. She chose her words carefully. "I don't measure my worth by money or ease. I measure it by how I treat others, and how I stay true to myself." Ethan's chest tightened. Each response, each steadfast principle, felt like a mirror reflecting his own shortcomings. The billionaire who controlled corporations, manipulated markets, and orchestrated deals with precision now felt powerless in the presence of simple, uncompromising integrity. Meanwhile, a side character, the diner's cook, a gruff man with a heart of gold, leaned over to Monica during a lull. "Hey, watch yourself with that one. He's different. I've seen people trip over their own ego before," he said with a wry grin. Monica laughed softly but said nothing, choosing to focus on her work rather than gossip. Ethan noticed the subtle interaction, the way she deflected the comment without dismissing it. It added another layer to his admiration, and another layer to his inner conflict. How could someone remain so grounded while the world pressed in from every side? By late afternoon, the cumulative pressure, small provocations, subtle manipulations, external complaints, and close observation created a tangible tension between them. Words were exchanged, glances held longer than necessary, and small misunderstandings brewed. Ethan, struggling with the duality of his deception and genuine admiration, began to show cracks, impatience in his posture, a sharp edge in his voice, a hint of frustration in his eyes. Monica, sensing the subtle changes, remained professional but inwardly cautious. She noticed the contradictions in his behavior, the curiosity, the frustration, the admiration, but could not yet decipher the truth behind them. Her intuition warned her to tread carefully, to protect her integrity while still remaining authentic. The diner had calmed slightly as the afternoon lull settled in. Plates clinked less, conversations softened, and the scent of coffee and toasted bread lingered like a familiar embrace. Monica wiped down the counter, moving methodically, but her mind wandered, a rare moment for reflection in a day that had been filled with constant demands. Ethan sat at his usual corner booth, quietly observing, though now his curiosity had shifted. The provocations, tests, and subtle manipulations had grown tiresome. He wanted to understand her, not the surface kindness, not the gestures performed with practiced grace, but the woman behind them. Monica moved toward him with a tray carrying a simple sandwich and a cup of coffee. "Here," she said, setting them down. "On the house. Consider it a thank you for being patient with the chaos today." Ethan blinked, momentarily taken aback. "On the house." She nodded, a soft, almost wistful smile touching her lips. "Sometimes, we do what we can, even if it doesn't change the world. It's the little choices that matter." He stared, sensing layers beneath her words, layers she had carefully hidden. "Why are you so unwavering? So kind, even when it's inconvenient?" Monica paused, glancing down at her hands folded on the table. There was a quiet hesitation, a small crack in the armor she usually wore. Then, slowly, she began to speak, her voice soft but firm. My parents, they struggled a lot. My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom, she tried, but life didn't give her a fair chance. I saw kindness overlooked, honesty ignored, and people judged for things they couldn't control. She swallowed, a flicker of pain crossing her features. I promised myself I wouldn't let the world harden me. I would choose compassion, even when it was hard, even when it didn't make sense to anyone else. Ethan listened, captivated. The world he controlled, with its power plays, stock markets, and corporate conquests, suddenly felt empty in comparison to the trials she had endured. Here was someone who had faced life's difficulties with courage and dignity, choosing integrity over convenience. She continued, almost to herself, I work here to support my little brother. He's smart, stubborn, and sometimes frustrating. But he deserves a chance to dream without being crushed by life's unfairness. That's why I do this, why I endure the long hours, the mess, the noise that's for him. Ethan's chest tightened. He had expected to test her morality, to see if she could be influenced, persuaded, or tempted. Instead, he was confronted with raw resilience, a strength forged in the fire of hardship. Every act of kindness, every refusal to compromise, now made sense. This wasn't performative. This was survival, love, and a moral code shaped by life itself. For a moment, the diner seemed to fade away. The clatter of dishes, the murmur of conversation, the faint smell of coffee and toast, all became background to the narrative she had just shared. He realized he had never truly listened to anyone before. Not like this. Not with patience, empathy, and attention to the subtle details that revealed character. Monica, he began, but hesitated. How could he respond? Any words from him, especially now, carried the weight of his deception. He wasn't just a man sitting in a booth. He was a billionaire hiding behind tattered clothes, manipulating a woman whose honesty and courage he had begun to admire. She met his eyes, and for a moment, the world shrank to this small diner, to the fragile connection forming between them. There was trust here, built on nothing but authenticity and choice. Every smile, every gesture she had shown, was now amplified by the story she had revealed. He wanted to reach out, to acknowledge the courage it took to live this way, but a voice in his mind reminded him of the truth he was hiding. One revelation could shatter everything. And yet, he couldn't look away. I see now, he said finally, voice quiet. Why you are who you are. I respect that. More than I can put into words. Monica gave a small nod, still cautious but aware of the sincerity behind his tone. It's simple, she said softly. Do what you can, for those who matter. The rest will find their own way. The diner had settled into the gentle rhythm of the late afternoon. The clatter of plates had softened, conversations hushed into murmurs, and the aroma of coffee and toasted bread lingered, warm and comforting. Monica moved between tables with practiced ease, but there was a subtle lightness to her movements today, a quiet reprieve from the stress of the morning. Ethan sat at his usual booth, watching her. After the first backstory reveal, a shift had occurred. He no longer observed her as an experiment or a test subject. He was beginning to see her as a person, complex and remarkable in ways that words could barely capture. A spilled cup of soda from a child at a nearby table sent Monica rushing, tray in hand. Ethan instinctively moved forward, catching the tray just before it toppled completely. Got it, he said, a small grin breaking across his face. Monica looked at him, a mix of surprise and amusement. You're getting braver, she teased lightly, her tone warm, not mocking. I'm just helping, he replied, a faint edge of awkwardness in his voice. Can't have the diner destroyed on my watch. She laughed softly, a sound that seemed to settle the chaos around them. You don't have to protect me, she said gently. I've got this. But there was something in her smile, something genuine and unguarded, that invited him in. It was the first real moment of connection, a subtle bonding, built not on shared history or common goals, but on the quiet recognition of mutual respect and understanding. They spent the next few minutes helping a frazzled young waitress serve a table that had just entered, coordinating movements without words. Ethan, despite his discomfort in manual labor, found himself laughing quietly when he fumbled with a stack of plates. Monica's quick hand steadied him, and their eyes met in a fleeting moment of shared amusement. You're not too bad at this, she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. For someone who claims to be, unpracticed. I'll take that as a compliment, he replied, smiling genuinely. For the first time that day, he felt less like a man performing a role and more like himself, stripped of pretense, if only for a moment. The bond deepened further when Monica offered him a small plate of cookies she had baked earlier for the staff. For your patience, she said, sliding the plate across the counter. And for surviving the chaos. Ethan's eyes softened. The gesture, simple as it was, carried weight. It wasn't part of the test. It wasn't a performance. It was kindness, uncalculated and sincere. He accepted a cookie, tasting the warmth and sweetness, and found it oddly grounding. You bake? He asked, surprised. Monica shrugged lightly. Sometimes. It's relaxing. Makes me feel like I'm creating something good, even when the day is messy. Ethan nodded, realizing how little he had created for pleasure or for others in his life. Everything had been transactions, power plays, investments, rarely joy or care. This small act, the simple sharing of cookies, revealed a depth of humanity he had long ignored. As the afternoon waned, a quiet calm settled over them. They shared small stories, Monica's brother's latest school antics, Ethan's, well, careful omissions of corporate conquests. Laughter echoed softly, a gentle balm over the tensions of previous days. The forced proximity and the shared tasks had created a fragile trust, a bond built on the recognition of character, effort, and shared human moments. Yet, beneath the warmth, tension simmered. Ethan knew he was still deceiving her. His true identity, his wealth, his motives, all remained hidden. Every smile, every laugh, carried the unspoken weight of secrets he wasn't ready to reveal. Monica, despite the budding connection, sensed layers she couldn't quite penetrate, her intuition alert to the subtle discrepancies in his words and demeanor. A small pause hung in the air as they cleaned up together after the last customers left for the afternoon. Ethan glanced at her, unsure whether to speak or simply remain silent. The vulnerability, the authenticity she had shown in the past days, demanded honesty, but he wasn't yet ready. Monica finally spoke, breaking the quiet. I appreciate the help today, she said softly. It made things easier. Ethan nodded, feeling the bond solidify, even in its fragility. And I appreciate being here, he replied, choosing his words carefully. You've taught me something important. She tilted her head slightly, curious but unpressured. Oh, and what's that? That integrity and kindness really do matter. More than I realized, he admitted quietly, the faintest trace of awe in his voice. The diner was bustling with the evening crowd, a mix of regulars and new faces, each bringing their own energy, complaints, and quirks. Monica moved through the chaos with practiced grace, balancing trays, refilling drinks, and greeting every customer with a smile that never seemed forced. Yet beneath her calm exterior, a tension had begun to build, not just from the demands of the diner, but from the persistent presence of Ethan. He had become a fixture in her daily routine, occupying the same corner booth, silently observing, yet somehow entwining himself into her world. Their growing connection, forged through small acts of kindness and shared laughter, now faced the first true external complications. A group of local teenagers entered, boisterous and loud, challenging Monica's patience. One of them accidentally knocked over a display of muffins, sending crumbs and powdered sugar scattering across the counter. Monica quickly cleaned up, muttering apologies, while Ethan instinctively stepped forward to help. Hey, watch it, one of the teens snapped, frustration and embarrassment mingling in their tone. Monica's eyes met Ethan's briefly, silently conveying the need for calm. He nodded, restraining his own impulse to assert dominance, a trait he had relied upon his entire life. Instead, he helped quietly, reinforcing the fragile teamwork that had begun to form between them. As they restored order, a sudden phone call from Ethan's assistant buzzed through his pocket. Normally, he would have ignored it in this setting, but the call brought urgent news. A major financial deal was at risk, one that required his immediate attention. His world of power and control intruded into this fragile bubble of simplicity and integrity. Monica noticed the shift in his demeanor, the brief furrow of his brow, the tension in his shoulders. Everything okay? She asked gently. Yes, just work, he replied, masking the storm of obligations and responsibilities that clawed at him from the outside world. He didn't want to reveal too much, not yet, and certainly not here. The diner had become a sanctuary, a place where pretense and wealth had no meaning, and he wanted to protect that fragile bubble, even if only for a few more hours. Meanwhile, a side character, the diner's longtime cook, pulled Monica aside. "Hey, these new tables aren't used to this place," he murmured, nodding toward a group of impatient customers. "Be careful. Things could get messy, and you don't want your good work overshadowed." Monica nodded, appreciating the advice but determined to maintain her composure. She returned to Ethan's side, a calm presence amid the storm. Yet, she couldn't ignore the subtle undercurrents. The way he flinched at a spilled coffee, the way he whispered to himself while taking calls, the way he seemed constantly on edge, as though juggling worlds she couldn't begin to see. Adding to the tension, a rumor began to circulate among the diner's patrons. Whispers of a mysterious man, unusual for his frequent visits, began to reach Monica's ears. "Do you know him?" one regular asked casually, tilting her head toward Ethan. "He's here almost every day, but something seems off." Monica's intuition, always finely tuned, picked up the subtle hints of something concealed. She smiled politely, deflecting the question, but inwardly, a sense of caution took root. The bond forming between her and Ethan, fragile and delicate, now faced its first true external tests. Suspicion from others, the intrusion of his outside responsibilities, and the growing sense that his presence was not entirely transparent. Ethan, meanwhile, wrestled with the complications in his own mind. His admiration for Monica, the fragile connection they were building, and the looming obligations of his billionaire world collided in a storm of conflicting priorities. Every attempt to maintain his disguise, every effort to participate in this simple human interaction, now carried the weight of potential disaster. One misstep could ruin everything: the trust, the bond, and the carefully observed lessons about integrity and kindness. The diner had quieted after the dinner rush, leaving only the soft murmur of remaining patrons and the occasional clatter of a dish being cleared. Monica wiped down the counter, her movements methodical, yet her mind lingered on the subtle tensions that had emerged throughout the day. She had noticed Ethan's occasional flinches, the furtive glances at his phone, and the occasional shadow in his eyes that suggested more than a simple man in worn clothes. Ethan sat at his usual booth, stirring his coffee slowly, avoiding eye contact with Monica as he wrestled with the decision to reveal part of his story. His secret, the truth of his wealth, his influence, and the deception he had employed, had weighed on him increasingly. The bond forming between them, fragile and genuine, demanded some honesty, even if incomplete. He set his cup down and looked at her. "Monica, can I tell you something?" His voice was quiet, hesitant, yet edged with urgency. Monica paused, cleaning a nearby table, and met his gaze. There was curiosity in her eyes, but also caution, an awareness that not everything he said might be what it seemed. "Of course," she replied softly, taking a step closer. He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I haven't been completely honest with you. I've been hiding a lot. About who I am, about why I've been here." Monica's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Go on," she said, voice calm but attentive. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability rarely seen by anyone. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm wealthy, influential, a CEO of a company that makes decisions that affect thousands. I came here, pretending otherwise, to understand people, to test character." Monica's eyes widened subtly, her composed exterior flickering for just a moment. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. She had sensed something extraordinary about him, but hearing the truth, even partially, shocked her nonetheless. "I wanted to see if kindness, integrity, and honesty could exist when there was no reward, no benefit, no pressure," he continued. "I didn't expect to learn from you, to feel what I feel now." His voice broke slightly, betraying the emotion he tried to mask. Monica remained still, processing the revelation. She had believed in his presence, in the small moments they had shared, but now the truth added layers of complexity. Her first instinct was to feel betrayed, but that was tempered by the undeniable humanity in his admission. He wasn't cruel, nor manipulative for personal gain. He had sought understanding, and in doing so, had inadvertently connected with her in a genuine way. "You came here to test me?" she asked quietly, a mix of incredulity and subtle hurt in her tone. "Yes," he admitted, eyes downcast. "But it didn't turn out the way I planned. You've shown me things I never expected. Integrity, patience, courage, kindness without calculation. I've learned more from you than any boardroom lesson, any deal, any strategy." Monica's expression softened slightly, her initial shock giving way to understanding. "And yet, you hid the truth," she said gently. "Why didn't you just be honest from the start?" Ethan hesitated, then answered honestly. "I feared it would change everything. I wanted to see the real you, not the version shaped by knowledge of who I am. I wanted to understand whether your character was genuine or performative. And I realize now that was selfish and wrong." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The diner seemed to hold its breath, the soft hum of lights and distant chatter fading into the background. The man who had tested her morality was now vulnerable, exposing his own flaws, regrets, and admiration. Monica studied him, the layers of deception and truth intertwining in her mind. She could sense his sincerity, the authenticity of his remorse, and the depth of his admiration. "You're complicated," she said softly, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "And maybe, in some ways, honest at last." Ethan met her gaze, a glimmer of hope breaking through the tension. "I want to make it right," he said quietly. "I want to show you that what I've learned, what I feel is real. Not because I'm supposed to, or because I gained something, but because it's true." Monica nodded slowly, the first step toward understanding and trust forming in the space between them. The diner had quieted further, with only a few late evening patrons lingering, sipping coffee or enjoying desserts. The day's chaos had faded into a comfortable rhythm, and the warm glow of the overhead lights cast a soft, golden hue across the tables. Monica moved with ease, her movements unhurried now, carrying trays with the grace of someone in her element. Ethan remained in his corner booth, watching her, not with scrutiny, but with genuine attention. The revelation of his identity had been a turning point, and now, stripped of pretense, he felt a strange relief. There was no longer a need to manipulate, no need to test. All that remained was the growing, tentative connection he had begun to cherish. Monica approached, carrying a small tray of cookies she had baked that afternoon for the staff. "I saved a few for you," she said with a smile, setting the plate before him. Ethan picked one up, savoring the simple sweetness. "You really think of everything," he said quietly, impressed not just by the gesture, but by the thoughtfulness behind it. She laughed softly, a warm sound that seemed to fill the small space between them. "Not everything," she admitted, "but I try. Life's too short to forget the little things." For a moment, silence stretched, comfortable and unforced. Then Monica leaned slightly, a playful glint in her eyes. "So, tell me one thing about your real life, without all the corporate speak. Something human." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Human," he repeated. "That's a dangerous request." "I promise I won't judge," she said lightly, nudging him gently with her elbow. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "All right. I used to play the piano as a kid. My parents pushed academics and business, but music, that was mine. I haven't touched a piano in years, though." Monica's eyes lit up. "Really? I love the piano. My brother and I would play together sometimes, though he's terrible at it. It was more for fun than skill." For the first time that day, Ethan felt a spark of something entirely different from the tension, tests, or admiration he had experienced. Nostalgia mingled with warmth, creating a bridge between them that was neither obligation nor experiment. He realized that beyond the facade, beyond wealth and power, he could simply be a person, and she could see that person. "Do you ever play for yourself?" Monica asked softly, curiosity in her tone. "Not often," he admitted. "But maybe one day again, if I can find the time." His words were tentative, yet they carried a longing he hadn't allowed himself to express before. Monica smiled gently. "You should. For yourself. Life's too short to wait for permission or circumstances." They spent the next few minutes sharing small stories of childhood memories, Monica's struggles, her brother's antics, her first job, and Ethan's rare glimpses of joy amidst a disciplined, structured upbringing. Laughter emerged naturally, a soft balm over the complications of earlier days. The diner seemed to shrink around them, the world outside fading, leaving only shared stories, mutual respect, and growing affection. Even the staff noticed subtle changes in their interactions, the way Ethan offered small gestures of help without overstepping, the way Monica's guarded smiles softened in response. There was no pressure, no pretense, only human connection slowly deepening through authenticity, humor, and shared moments. A side character, the diner's elderly janitor, paused nearby, watching them quietly. "Looks like someone's finally learning how to be normal," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head with a knowing grin. Ethan caught the comment and laughed softly, a sound that felt light and unburdened. Monica raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Someone's very opinionated, aren't they?" "They mean well," Ethan replied, his smile genuine, even if it's not always subtle. The diner was unusually quiet for a Friday evening. Most of the regulars had gone home, leaving only a few scattered tables and the soft hum of the lights overhead. Monica moved behind the counter, her movements methodical but tinged with unease. Something in the air felt heavier than usual, an unspoken tension that neither she nor Ethan could ignore. Ethan had been distracted all day, pacing the small area near his booth, glancing repeatedly at his phone. A series of urgent calls from his corporate world, investors, board members, and an unexpected media leak demanded his immediate attention. His dual lives were colliding, and for the first time, the fragile sanctuary of the diner felt threatened. Without warning, the diner's door swung open, and a local journalist, a frequent patron who had caught glimpses of Ethan's peculiar behavior, stepped inside, camera slung over the shoulder. "Mr. Dalton," she called, her voice carrying across the room. "You've been making headlines." Monica froze, the tray in her hands trembling slightly. Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't anticipated that his secret might be discovered here, in this space that had become his haven. The journalist approached the booth, ignoring the few patrons in the diner. "You've been seen daily at this diner in what some are calling a remarkable disguise. Care to explain?" Ethan's world narrowed to a single point. The walls of his carefully constructed experiment were crumbling. The bond he had begun to nurture with Monica, built on trust, shared laughter, and small acts of kindness, was at risk of shattering completely. Monica stepped forward instinctively, placing herself slightly between Ethan and the journalist. Her eyes, normally warm and steady, were now a mixture of shock, confusion, and betrayal. "Wait, what's going on?" she demanded, voice trembling slightly. Ethan looked at her, a mixture of regret and helplessness in his eyes. "Monica, I can explain. Please, just let me." But the journalist, sensing a story, pressed forward. "People are going to want the full truth. You've been pretending to be someone you're not, right here in this community. Why? Who are you really?" Monica's chest tightened. She felt blindsided, betrayed. Every moment of laughter, every shared cookie, every vulnerable story she had told, had it been part of an experiment? Her mind raced, struggling to reconcile the man she had started to trust with the billionaire hiding beneath the frayed jacket and jeans. Ethan tried to reach for her hand, but she recoiled slightly, the hurt and shock clear. Monica, it wasn't about hurting you," he said, voice breaking. "I came here because I wanted to understand, to learn. But you've shown me more than I could ever expect. Please believe me." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, she allowed herself to voice the pain she had been holding back. "How am I supposed to believe anything now? Everything I thought I knew about you. Was it all a lie?" The diner, once a place of warmth and small comforts, now felt suffocating. The spilled muffins, the clattering dishes, the laughter, all memories of intimacy, were now tainted by the revelation. Ethan, despite his wealth and power, felt powerless. The experiment he had conducted had led to genuine connection, but it also led to heartbreak. A side character, the diner's cook, who had witnessed their growing bond, intervened gently. "Sometimes, the truth doesn't come easy," he said quietly to Monica. "But people can change, and hearts, they're more complicated than we think." Monica didn't respond immediately. She needed space, time, and clarity. She stepped back, tears welling, feeling the emotional weight of betrayal. Ethan sat in his booth, silent and heavy-hearted, realizing that no amount of explanation could immediately repair the damage. The diner felt emptier than ever. The soft hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes had faded into silence, replaced by a heavy, almost tangible weight. Monica sat behind the counter, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, staring blankly at the steam rising from it. Every corner of the diner reminded her of the laughter, warmth, and trust she had begun to share with Ethan, and now, each memory cut like shards of glass. Ethan remained in his booth, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the table. The truth of his identity had shattered the fragile bond he had carefully nurtured. The experiment, the deception, had yielded the one thing he hadn't anticipated, genuine emotional connection. And now, he had no idea if it could be salvaged. Outside, the evening crowd had thinned, leaving the diner quiet and reflective. Monica's mind raced. She questioned her judgment, her intuition, and even her ability to trust others. Every laugh, every shared gesture with Ethan now felt like a potential lie. How could she reconcile the man she had come to admire with the billionaire who had manipulated her for an experiment? Meanwhile, Ethan wrestled with his own torment. For the first time, he felt powerless in a way money and influence could never shield him from. Every phone call ignored, every corporate obligation delayed, reminded him that some battles couldn't be won with wealth alone. He had underestimated the human element, the fragility of trust, the consequences of betrayal, and the complexity of emotional bonds. A side character, the diner's cook, leaned against the counter, watching both silently. He had seen countless conflicts play out over the years, and he knew that healing would require more than explanations. Sometimes, people need to feel the weight of truth before they can forgive, he murmured, almost to himself. Monica didn't respond, lost in thought. She thought of her little brother, the reason she endured long hours and endless stress. She wondered what example she had just set about trust and judgment. Could people ever truly be understood? Or were all connections just fragile illusions waiting to be tested? Ethan finally spoke, voice low and tinged with regret. Monica, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could observe, learn, maybe even inspire. But I didn't anticipate this. His hands trembled slightly, a rare sign of vulnerability. I miscalculated and I'm sorry. Monica looked at him, her eyes reflecting hurt, confusion, and lingering warmth. Sorry doesn't erase the manipulation, Ethan. It doesn't erase the lies, the deceit. How am I supposed to move past this? The diner seemed to hold its breath, the weight of their emotions filling the space. Both were broken in different ways. Monica, questioning trust and authenticity. Ethan, confronting the limitations of power and control. Even the regular patrons, sensing the tension, became quiet observers. Their whispers carried through the emptying diner, speculation mingling with empathy. Some recognized the raw human vulnerability on display, others questioned the choices made by both. As the evening stretched on, the protagonists grappled with their inner turmoil. Monica contemplated her principles, her intuition, and the boundaries she needed to set. Ethan reflected on his motives, his values, and the ways in which his life of control had failed to prepare him for authentic connection. A small moment of human connection emerged from the chaos. A young regular, who had noticed the tension, left a note on the counter. Sometimes, the heart sees what the eyes cannot. Be kind, even when hurt. Monica glanced at it, and despite the lingering pain, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. Ethan noticed her glance and, without speaking, offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Words failed, but the silent gesture carried a promise. The story wasn't over. Mistakes had been made, but hearts were still capable of change, understanding, and growth. The morning sun streamed through the diner's large windows, casting a soft glow over the polished counters and worn wooden tables. Monica moved behind the counter, her movements careful but slow, weighed down by the lingering hurt from the previous evening. The emptiness of the diner seemed to echo her own sense of isolation, trust fractured, heart guarded, and questions swirling endlessly in her mind. Ethan arrived shortly after, hesitating at the entrance. Unlike his usual confident stride, today he walked cautiously, as if stepping into unfamiliar territory. He stopped near the door, scanning the room. Monica's back was turned, focused on cleaning a coffee pot, unaware of his presence. The weight of their previous confrontation hung heavily in the air, unspoken yet palpable. Before either could speak, a side character, Harold, the diner's elderly janitor, appeared from the corner, his presence calm, yet commanding attention. Harold had observed the bond forming between Monica and Ethan over the past weeks, and he had quietly noted the recent fracture. He shuffled toward them with deliberate steps, carrying a small stack of newspapers and a keen, knowing smile. "Morning, folks," Harold greeted softly, setting the newspapers down on the counter. "I couldn't help but notice the tension around here lately. Thought maybe a little perspective could help." Monica raised an eyebrow, wary but curious. Ethan, too, looked at Harold, sensing that this intervention was unusual. Harold's eyes twinkled with the quiet wisdom that only years of life could grant. "Look," Harold began gently, "life has a way of testing us in unexpected ways. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes subtle. What you two have, it's rare. But rare things require patience, understanding, and, most importantly, the willingness to see beyond immediate hurt." Monica turned fully to face him, her arms crossed, defensive yet receptive. "And what would you know about rare connections?" she asked softly, a hint of skepticism in her voice. Harold chuckled quietly. "More than you'd think. I've watched people hide behind masks, manipulate, and even deceive, but I've also seen them change, learn, and grow. The key is this. Sometimes, a mistake doesn't define the heart. It just asks for honesty, effort, and a chance to make things right." Ethan's chest tightened. He had felt powerless, knowing his deception had hurt Monica. Harold's words struck a chord, reminding him that action, sincerity, and patience could still mend what had been broken. Harold turned to Monica. "You've shown incredible integrity, kindness, and courage. Don't let one moment of betrayal cloud everything else you've experienced. People are messy. Hearts are complicated. But the ones that are worth keeping? They fight for understanding. They show up." Monica's eyes softened, her walls cracking just slightly. She glanced at Ethan, who now stood quietly, his expression one of quiet hope and remorse. Harold's guidance had offered her a lens through which to see the situation, not as a complete loss, but as an opportunity for growth and potential reconciliation. Ethan stepped closer, voice low but earnest. "Monica, I don't expect forgiveness immediately. I only ask for a chance to show you that what I feel, and what I've learned, is real. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." Monica studied him, noting the sincerity, the subtle humility, and the genuine emotion that had been absent before. Harold nodded slightly, silently encouraging patience, reflection, and openness. A small pause settled over the diner, the quiet punctuated only by the distant hum of the morning traffic. Monica finally spoke, her voice tentative but steady. "It won't be easy," she admitted. "But I'm willing to see if actions can speak louder than words." Ethan's eyes lit up with cautious optimism. "Thank you," he said quietly, a genuine smile breaking through the tension. Harold shuffled back to his corner, observing from a distance. His role was subtle, almost invisible, yet his guidance had shifted the trajectory of events. The protagonists, though still vulnerable, now faced the path forward with slightly softened hearts, willingness to communicate, and a renewed sense of hope. The diner had emptied for the evening, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerators and the distant murmur of traffic outside. Monica sat at a corner table, staring into her half-empty cup of coffee. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, from shared laughter and fragile bonding to betrayal, heartbreak, and finally, Harold's gentle guidance. The weight of everything pressed heavily on her, forcing her to confront not just Ethan's deception, but her own reactions, judgments, and lingering fears. She thought about the times she had laughed freely with Ethan, the small moments of kindness that had felt genuine, and the connection that had grown despite the walls she had built around her heart. Could someone capable of deception also be capable of true remorse, change, and genuine affection? She wasn't sure, but the seed of possibility had been planted. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his usual booth, quietly reflecting on his own flaws. His experiment, born of curiosity and a desire to understand human character, had turned into a personal revelation. He realized how much he had relied on control, wealth, and status to navigate the world, and how little he truly understood about vulnerability, honesty, and trust. Monica had shown him that even in the simplest of settings, integrity and kindness held far greater weight than any boardroom success. He thought back to his confession, the pain in Monica's eyes, and the silence that had followed. The truth had been his burden, but it had also been the first step toward authenticity. He now faced a choice: retreat back into the safety of his powerful world, or step forward with humility, patience, and the courage to rebuild trust. Harold, observing from his corner, had been right. Hearts were complicated, mistakes were part of growth, and effort was essential for healing. Ethan understood now that wealth and influence could never replace sincerity and the genuine actions that spoke louder than any words. Monica's reflection was quieter, but no less profound. She considered her own response to betrayal and disappointment, realizing that the sting of hurt was universal. Everyone, no matter how strong or principled, was vulnerable to deception, misunderstanding, or misplaced trust. Her choices now would define not only her relationship with Ethan, but also her sense of self and boundaries. Could she allow herself to take a risk again, to open her heart despite the fear of being hurt? Ethan finally stood, moving to the counter where Monica cleaned the last of the coffee mugs. He didn't speak immediately, allowing the silence to stretch, a gesture of respect, of understanding, and of patience. He knew that reflection was the bridge between past mistakes and future possibility. Monica looked up, meeting his gaze. There was no anger in her eyes, only contemplation, guarded curiosity, and the faintest flicker of hope. She had processed the pain, weighed the sincerity of his actions, and recognized the possibility for redemption. Ethan spoke softly, his voice low and deliberate. "I've spent so long controlling everything, trying to predict outcomes and manipulate situations, and I've learned that the heart isn't something you can control. You have to respect it, nurture it, and sometimes wait for it to heal." Monica listened, absorbing the words, sensing the truth in them. Her reflection had led her to a realization. If Ethan truly cared, if he genuinely learned from his mistakes, then there might still be a path forward. But it would require honesty, patience, and consistent effort, qualities that could only be proven over time. For a long moment, they simply sat together, neither speaking, allowing the weight of reflection to settle. The diner, once a place of laughter and chaos, then heartbreak, had become a space for clarity and contemplation. Here, both protagonists faced their flaws, choices, and emotions, preparing for the next step in their journey. The diner was quiet in the early evening, with only a few loyal patrons lingering over coffee and dessert. The soft hum of the lights and the occasional clatter of a dish created a gentle rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, steady and calming. Monica stood behind the counter, wiping it down slowly, lost in thought. Every action, every glance, and every memory of the past days played through her mind. The laughter, the small gestures, the moments of connection, all contrasted sharply with the pain of deception she had endured. Ethan entered cautiously, the weight of the previous fallout still heavy on his shoulders. He paused at the entrance, watching Monica from a distance. He wanted to speak, to explain, to plead, but he knew that words alone could not bridge the gap. Rebuilding trust required action, consistency, and courage. He approached her quietly, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked on his way, simple and unpretentious, much like the gestures she valued. "Monica," he said softly, placing the flowers on the counter between them, "I know I've hurt you. I've broken trust, and I can't take back the past. But I can choose to do better, starting now." Monica looked down at the flowers, then up at him, studying his expression. There was no arrogance, no expectation, only sincerity. Her heart wavered. The choice before her was not easy: to protect herself and her heart, or to allow the possibility of forgiveness, understanding, and connection. Ethan continued, his voice earnest. "I came here pretending to be someone I'm not, to test, to observe. But the truth is, I learned more about myself and about life from you than I ever could have anticipated. You've shown me integrity, patience, and kindness in ways I never experienced before. I want to honor that. I want to earn back your trust, not through words, but through actions, every single day." Monica's mind raced. She remembered the small moments of warmth, the shared laughter, and the bond that had grown despite the walls she had built. Could she take the risk again? Could she allow herself to believe that someone capable of deceit could also be capable of genuine change? Silence hung in the diner for a few moments, heavy with anticipation. Then Monica spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Ethan, actions speak louder than words. If you truly mean what you're saying, then show me. Not just today, not just now, but consistently. That's how trust is rebuilt." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I will," he promised, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his commitment. "Every day, in every way, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that my feelings, my respect, and my admiration are real." For the first time in days, Monica allowed herself a small smile, a tentative, cautious gesture, but one that carried hope. "Then, we'll see," she said, her tone calm, yet full of possibility. A side character, the diner's cook, watched from across the room, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. He had witnessed the highs, the lows, and now, the first steps toward reconciliation. Sometimes, he thought, the hardest battles were the ones fought within hearts, and the rewards, when they came, were profound. Ethan reached out slowly, his hand hovering near hers on the counter. Monica didn't pull away. Instead, she allowed a brief touch, tentative and fleeting, but meaningful. It was a gesture that spoke of hope, possibility, and the willingness to take a risk on connection once more. The diner buzzed softly with the quiet energy of a mid-morning crowd. Sunlight spilled through the windows, casting a warm glow on the tables and the polished counters. For the first time in days, the atmosphere felt lighter. The tension that had haunted the space, the weight of betrayal, heartbreak, and suspicion, seemed to lift, replaced by cautious optimism. Monica moved with her usual efficiency, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. Her smiles, once restrained and wary, now carried a hint of warmth directed toward Ethan. She caught him watching her from his usual booth, his posture less rigid, his gaze softer. There was no pretense, no disguise, just presence. Ethan had arrived early, carrying a small notebook. He had spent the morning reflecting on his actions and brainstorming ways to demonstrate consistent effort and sincerity. Today wasn't about grand gestures. It was about small, meaningful actions that spoke louder than any words. As Monica approached his booth with a cup of coffee, Ethan smiled. "Thought you could use a refill," he said lightly, meeting her eyes. She returned a small smile, accepting the cup. "Thanks," she replied softly. The gesture, simple as it was, carried unspoken acknowledgement, a tentative bridge being rebuilt between them. Throughout the morning, they shared light conversation, the kind that had once come naturally before deception had intervened. They laughed at small mishaps, a tray tipping slightly, a misheard order, and the occasional clumsy patron. Each moment was infused with genuine connection, reinforcing the fragile hope that trust could be restored. Ethan took the opportunity to engage in small acts of service without drawing attention. He refilled sugar containers, helped carry trays to tables, and even offered to clean a spill, all gestures unnoticed by most patrons, but deeply meaningful to Monica. These actions, consistent and sincere, demonstrated his commitment to rebuilding trust in ways that words alone could not. Monica noticed the subtle changes. Her heart, once guarded and hesitant, began to soften. The walls she had erected around herself were not gone, but they were yielding, just enough to allow glimpses of the man she had begun to care for. The hope rekindled in her chest was fragile, yet undeniable. A side character, the diner's regular, a retired teacher, observed the subtle interplay between the two. With a gentle smile, she whispered to the cook, "It's rare to see someone earn back trust with such care. But it looks like he's trying, and she's noticing." Ethan noticed her attention but didn't comment. His focus remained on authentic gestures, each small act a thread in the slow weaving of renewed connection. Monica, too, engaged with patience, allowing herself to respond to his efforts without forcing anything, letting trust build naturally over time. The first significant breakthrough came when Monica dropped a plate while carrying a tray of desserts. It shattered with a loud crash, startling nearby patrons. Instinctively, Ethan moved forward to help, collecting the pieces and offering her a reassuring smile. "I've got it," he said softly. "No need to worry. Accidents happen." Monica paused, meeting his eyes. The warmth, calmness, and absence of judgment in his tone spoke volumes. In that moment, she realized that while the past could not be erased, the present offered a chance to rebuild, carefully and deliberately. The diner was alive with the evening rush, clattering dishes, laughter, and chatter filling the space. For a moment, the tension of the past weeks seemed to fade as Monica and Ethan moved through the familiar rhythms of work and shared glances. Trust had been slowly rekindled, small gestures and light conversation restoring a fragile connection. But the universe rarely allows peace to remain unchallenged. Ethan's phone buzzed sharply in his pocket, and a sudden look of alarm crossed his face. He stepped aside to answer it, his tone tense and urgent. On the other line was a high-powered associate from his corporate world. "Ethan, the media leak is escalating. They've discovered more details, and if it hits the press tonight, it could ruin the experiment and your personal reputation entirely. You need to act fast." Monica, watching from behind the counter, sensed the shift immediately. Her heart tightened. She had believed the bond forming between them was building towards something real, yet now the intrusion of Ethan's other life threatened to undo every step forward. Ethan hung up and turned to her, eyes filled with urgency. "Monica, there's something I have to handle tonight. It's complicated, but I need you to trust me. I promise I won't let it affect us, but I need to step away briefly." Monica hesitated, the old fear of betrayal resurfacing. "You mean, back to the world you hid from me? How can I know this isn't another deception?" He shook his head, frustration mingling with determination. "It's not. This is real. I'm asking for your patience, just a little longer. Everything we've built, it depends on me handling this correctly." Meanwhile, a side character, the diner's cook, observed the tension quietly. Sometimes, he murmured to himself, the hardest tests come after the lessons are learned. But courage isn't just about facing the world, it's about facing the heart. Ethan left the diner temporarily to resolve the escalating crisis, leaving Monica to manage the dinner crowd alone. Every minute felt heavy, each moment stretching the fragile threads of trust. Patrons noticed her quiet moments of reflection, sensing the intensity of her emotions, yet no one intruded. Back outside, Ethan navigated the storm of corporate pressure. He had to correct misinformation, manage reputational risks, and contain leaks, all while knowing that Monica's perception of him hung in the balance. The stakes were high, not just for his career, but for the relationship he had risked everything to rebuild. Inside the diner, Monica wrestled with her own doubts. Could she believe him? Could she let herself trust the man she had begun to care for, even when the world threatened to expose him? Her reflection was interrupted when Harold, the janitor, quietly approached. "Trust isn't about certainty," he said softly. "It's about choice. Sometimes, you have to choose to believe what you see in actions, not words." Monica nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. She understood that patience and observation were key. The final obstacle wasn't just external, it was internal. Her ability to trust fully, to let go of fear, and to allow genuine connection to flourish despite risk. Hours passed, and finally, Ethan returned. His expression was weary but resolute. He had handled the crisis, repaired potential fallout, and maintained his integrity without deception. The tension eased slightly in the diner, though both knew the emotional stakes remained delicate. Ethan approached Monica, offering a small, genuine smile. "It's done," he said quietly. "The storm has passed, and I'm here. I've kept my word." Monica studied him carefully, noting the truth in his eyes, the exhaustion mingled with sincerity. She realized that the final obstacle, her fear, the external pressures, and the lingering doubts, had been faced and overcome. Their bond, tested by deception, heartbreak, and challenge, had endured. The diner was bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon sunlight, casting long, golden beams across the tables. Monica moved with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks, her heart lighter, her mind clearer. Ethan sat across from her in the corner booth, his hands resting gently on the table. No pretense, no disguise, only honesty and vulnerability. Ethan took a deep breath. "Monica, I need to tell you something, everything." Monica leaned forward slightly, attentive but cautious. Her heart fluttered. She had seen his sincerity before, yet the fear of disappointment still lingered. I've learned so much from you. Ethan began, voice steady but filled with emotion. About trust, patience, integrity, and love. The experiment, it was wrong. I see that now. What I did, how I hid from you, manipulated moments to test your character. It shouldn't have happened. And I'm truly sorry. Monica studied him, searching his eyes for deception. All she saw was genuine remorse, clarity, and the willingness to take full responsibility for his actions. But that's not all, he continued. I also realized that what I feel for you isn't part of some experiment. It's real. The connection we've built, the laughter, the shared moments, the trust we're rebuilding. It's the most authentic thing I've ever experienced. Monica's chest tightened, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She reached out, touching his hand gently. Ethan, it's taken me time to see it, to believe it. But I see it now. I see you really. And I want to trust you. I want to believe in what we can have together. Ethan's eyes softened, relief and gratitude washing over him. You have no idea what that means to me, he whispered. I promise, no more tests, no more games. Only honesty, respect, and care, for you, for us. Outside, a soft breeze moved through the diner, rustling the leaves and carrying a sense of renewal. The once tense atmosphere had shifted entirely. Their breakthrough was not just emotional. It was a tangible, living thing, felt in the space between them, in the quiet smiles, and in the hands intertwined across the table. A side character, the retired teacher who had watched their journey, smiled knowingly. Sometimes it takes a storm to clear the air, she murmured to the cook. And sometimes, hearts that endure the storm come out stronger than ever. Monica laughed softly, a sound filled with relief and joy. I almost didn't believe we'd get here, she admitted. Ethan smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Me neither, he said gently. But here we are, and I'm not letting go. They spent the next few hours talking openly, sharing hopes, dreams, fears, and desires. No tests, no pretenses, only authentic conversation. The emotional walls had been dismantled, replaced by a foundation of trust and understanding. The diner was bathed in the warm glow of sunset, the golden light reflecting off polished counters and worn wooden tables. Patrons chatted softly, some lingering over their last cups of coffee, unaware that a profound transformation had taken place behind the counter. Monica moved gracefully, her earlier wariness replaced with calm confidence and joy. She glanced at Ethan, who was setting down a freshly brewed pot of coffee with a careful smile. Their eyes met, and in that simple exchange, every moment of doubt, every tear, and every test faded into the past. What remained was trust, understanding, and a shared sense of connection stronger than either had imagined. The journey had been long. Ethan had started as a man seeking to test another's character, but he had emerged humbled, changed, and aware of the power of honesty, empathy, and vulnerability. Monica, once cautious and guarded, had learned the strength of patience, the grace of forgiveness, and the courage to trust her heart despite risk. Ethan approached Monica, carrying a small, handwritten note. He handed it to her with a soft smile. On it were simple words, no more tests, only honesty, only us. Monica read it slowly, a tear of joy slipping down her cheek. She looked up at him, smiled, and reached for his hand. The touch was firm yet gentle, a silent vow to face the future together. They shared a quiet laugh, remembering the small, everyday moments that had become their foundation, spilled coffee, clumsy trays, and fleeting smiles across a crowded diner. It was in these moments, humble and unremarkable to the world, that their true bond had formed. They had faced deception, heartbreak, and obstacles, and had emerged stronger, ready to embrace the life they had chosen to build together.
Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this one, then you'll absolutely love the next. It's even crazier and more captivating than you can imagine. So go ahead and click the video showing right here on your screen, and I'll see you in the next story.